Welcome to Brilliant Minds Unlocked. We are diving into a story today that is, well, it's fundamentally about defiance and deep, deep resilience.
It really is.
Let's set a scene for you. Picture an agronomist. He's standing alone in the relentless Mexican sun, miles and miles away from any air-conditioned boardroom. He's fighting what he called the silent killer of productivity.
Degraded soil.
Exactly. Soil that was, generation by generation, just dying under the weight of industrial chemicals.
And that man is Gerardo Noriega Altamirano. You probably don't know his name, but his work is, I would argue, one of the most critical environmental and economic success stories of the last 30 years.
So this deep dive is really your shortcut to understanding how one person's unyielding vision managed to fuel Mexico's soil revolution, turning these huge tracts of barren, wounded land into thriving ecosystems.
And our mission here is pretty straightforward. We're unpacking the sources that track Noriega's truly remarkable journey.
We want to understand how he defied this intense skepticism. I mean, he was literally mocked for promoting hippie nonsense to eventually train over 100,000 farmers and completely shift national policy.
It's a classic David versus Goliath story, isn't it? Where Goliath controls the market, the money, and, the whole narrative.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start right at the beginning, what the sources call the darkest hour of Mexican agriculture.
To really get the revolution, you have to understand the toxicity that had just permeated the whole system.
We're talking about the 80s and 90s.
Exactly. The 1980s, the 1990s. The global push was for maximum yield, which meant these high-volume chemical fertilizers, pesticides, they became standard. They were cheap, easy to get a hold of in Mexico.
And I'm guessing yield spiked at first, but then the long-term impact.
Devastating. It was devastating for the soil structure. Farmers were using more and more of these inputs, and their land was basically becoming addicted to them.
So when a drought hits, or maybe the cost of chemicals goes up,
the smallholders were completely exposed, their topsoil was eroding, all the microbial life was dying, and that promise of a big bounty, it just crumbled. They were actually harvesting less while paying more.
So Noriega sees this happening.
He does. He's rooted in the academic world at the Universidad Autónoma Chapingo, and he's watching this ecological collapse in real time. His first move away from conventional methods toward agroecology, it was met with just absolute derision from his peers.
They thought he was rejecting progress.
Totally. They saw it as rejecting science for some kind of romanticism.
And I have to imagine the financial pressure on top of that academic scorn. I mean, if he's not taking industry money or government grants tied to chemicals, where did he get funding?
That's just it. He didn't. That's the core of the struggle. The grants evaporated, bills piled up. Financially, it was a disaster for him.
Wow.
But what really solidified his resolve, and the sources are clear on this, was the personal cost.
What do you mean?
Family illnesses, specifically linked to polluted local water sources. It drove home the fact that this wasn't some, abstract scientific problem. This was about community survival, human health.
And the crisis hits its peak in the early 2000s. We're seeing data suggesting that industrial farming had ravaged over half of Mexico's arable land.
Over half. It's a staggering number. And it wasn't just a quality decline, it was an economic catastrophe. It fueled rural poverty, which in turn forced these huge migrations.
And this is when Noriega is at his most isolated.
Completely. He's out there conducting field trials, trying to undo decades of damage, and frankly, those early trials, they often failed spectacularly.
Because you can't just fix dead soil overnight.
No, it's not a quick fix. And of course, his critics pointed to those failures and dismissed him, labeled him a naive dreamer.
But the fight wasn't just with failing crops or mocking peers, was it? This is where the real systemic opposition comes in.
Right. The agro-industry giants weren't just ignoring him. They were actively accusing him of undermining national food security.
The argument being that organic just can't scale.
Exactly. This can't possibly feed a country the size of Mexico. He was branded a radical, a threat to their supply chains. His voice was just drowned out by these heavily funded corporate lobbies.
He was fighting a narrative war.
As much as an ecological one, yeah. You can feel that frustration in his papers from that time. He posed this question: if we poison the earth that sustains us, what legacy do we leave our children?
That's not an academic question, that's a call to arms.
It was. And that defiance forced him to dig deeper, to find solutions that were scientifically sound and, crucially, resilient.
So let's get to that, the 2010s, the turning point. The sources describe it like a phoenix igniting from the ashen fields. What did he actually do that started working?
He stopped fighting nature and started, well, mimicking it. His big contribution was refining and scaling these agroecological techniques that were low input but, high wisdom.
So what does that look like on the ground?
It involves disciplined crop rotation. That stops the soil from being stripped of the same nutrients year after year. Then there are cover crops, things like clover or vetch.
Right, things you don't actually harvest.
Exactly. They're like living ground armor. They hold moisture, they suppress weeds naturally, and they feed all that essential microbial life in the soil.
So instead of pouring chemicals on to kill weeds and feed the plant, they were feeding the soil itself.
Precisely. And then this was amplified by these sophisticated biofertilizers, often made from local organic waste. It's a living system approach, not a dead chemical transaction.
But the breakthrough, the real weapon against the skeptics, had to be the data, right? The quantifiable success from his research at Chipingo.
Oh, the numbers are where the romance met the rigor. The data speaks volumes. In his pilot zones, and we're talking real-world testing, mirroring successes in projects like Madre Tierra in Michoacán.
Which was a coffee project, right?
A sustainable coffee project, yeah. The results were dramatic. Noriega's system slashed the use of chemical inputs, including those expensive synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, by an incredible 50%.
50%? Wait, that's a huge cut in a farmer's operating costs. But if you cut inputs that much, did the output suffer? That was the whole argument against him.
It's the primary argument, and he just shattered it. The regenerated fields didn't just maintain yields, they boosted them. We saw increases of 19 tons per hectare in the pilot plots.
19 tons.
For a small farmer on a razor-thin margin, that's the difference between poverty and prosperity. It instantly changed the whole economic calculus.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the impact goes way beyond the farm gate, doesn't it? When you revitalize soil like this.
Absolutely. The so what for the planet is enormous. These healthy, organic, rich soils were reborn as significant carbon sinks.
Meaning they pull carbon out of the atmosphere.
Exactly. The deep roots, the organic matter. They captured CO2 at incredible rates. When you extrapolate that, the sources estimate it's the carbon equivalent of circling the Earth multiple times.
So the message became clear. This wasn't some feel-good theory. It was a quantifiable, high-performance lifeline for farmers and for the planet.
And that success set the stage for the next phase. Scaling the revolution, especially when the climate really started to get unstable.
Which brings us to the ultimate stress test, the 2020 climate chaos. Mexico had these prolonged, severe droughts. What happened to Noriega's models when the rain just stopped?
That was the moment of validation. While the neighboring conventional farms, totally dependent on irrigation and with shallow roots, they failed. They withered. But Noriega's organically rich soils,
They held on to the water.
they held on. Their superior root structures retained water so much more effectively, and they had natural pest deterrents because the biodiversity was back. They proved their resilience when it mattered most.
And that undeniable success is what let him go from being a radical academic to a key national influencer. Talk about the scale of that training effort.
It was a massive decentralized effort. He trained over 100,000 producers directly,
Wow.
but not alone. It was in partnership with governmental bodies, like SADR, the Secretariat of Agriculture. This grassroots success created a groundswell that started to influence major policy.
And those policy shifts are key because they bake this into the system.
Yes. His influence was critical in establishing policies like INASIS, which is Mexico's national strategy for soil sustainability. Before this, soil health was an afterthought. Now it was a national priority.
And that must have translated from environmental health to real economic health for the farmers.
Immediately, it was reflected right in their bank accounts. By getting stable, high yields with way lower input costs, and by cutting out intermediaries in the supply chain, smallholders saw their average incomes go up by 30%.
30%. That is life-changing. And the sources mention this having a global impact, too.
For sure. We see these regenerative triumphs in high-value export crops. For instance, strawberries that end up in supply chains for huge global brands like Danone. It proved sustainability could compete head-to-head in the commercial market.
But if it was all so clear, higher yields, lower costs, more resilience, why was there still controversy? I mean, surely the data shut the skeptics up.
It just raised a different debate. The cost curve. Detractors jumped on the initial costs of transition. Rebuilding soil takes time, it takes investment, and the media kept asking this question. Is organic farming a luxury for the elite?
That was the new rhetorical weapon.
The primary one. So how did Noriega, the scientist, fight back against a political narrative that was framing his life's work as some kind of unattainable idealism?
He used more data.
He fought with data. delivered with what the sources call a quiet fury. He funneled that skepticism into meticulous research, producing hundreds of Google scholar-cited work that validated every single claim.
And that body of work eventually bolstered national plans.
It did. It bolstered huge plans like PLECCA, the Special Program for Climate Change, which focuses on cutting agricultural emissions and improving water efficiency. His evidence was just. It was too robust to ignore.
It sounds like he forced corporate interests and government planners to admit that long-term ecological health was actually the most financially conservative decision.
That's a perfect way to put it.
We've covered the public battle and the scientific win, but I want to go back to the human cost. This kind of fight doesn't happen without immense personal sacrifice.
No, it doesn't. The sources talk about the trials of the spirit,
Right.
and they were profound. I mean, can you imagine the sleepless nights debating with your own family, trying to justify risking their financial stability on methods the whole world was telling you were crazy?
That internal conflict must have been excruciating. And there was physical risk, too. The sources mention a near-fatal field accident.
Yeah, he inhaled fumes from failing conventional plots that he was observing. It was this visceral, horrifying wake-up call, a reminder of the literal toxicity he was fighting. It just galvanized him.
And his endurance is what's so fascinating. When the political currents shifted back, as they always do, and policies favored cheap monocropping again, he found himself professionally isolated.
He did, but he sustained the movement by investing in the future. He shifted his energy back to the university, mentoring the next generation of agronomists at Chapingo.
Embedding it in the DNA of Mexican agriculture.
Exactly. He made sure it wasn't just a passing friend. His work optimized water footprints for over 28 different crops, institutionalized efficient irrigation. He built a foundation.
And that legacy, it now extends far beyond Mexico's borders, right? His success became a blueprint for regenerative agriculture across Latin America.
That's the true measure of his impact. You hear testimonies from farmers like Claudia Cuenca, who said, the land was exhausted, now it sustains generations. It's generational healing.
And for those of us listening in North America, his impact is surprisingly close.
It is. The sources highlight this astonishing statistic. 1 in 5 North American strawberries can be traced back to production methods inspired by this movement, which significantly reduces the environmental footprint of those crops.
He really was a warrior farmer, battling not with force, but with patience, with wisdom, and with just irrefutable data. He took what looked like agricultural despair and turned it into a beacon of hope.
And he showed that critical thinking and the courage to defy massive corporate pressure, even when you're isolated and failing, it can yield systemic, profitable, and lasting results.
So we've covered the whole journey. The endurance it took to transform a system that was addicted to these quick, toxic fixes into a sustainable, profitable reality built on resilience.
It's a powerful testament to critical thinking in the face of all this information overload and corporate pressure. It sort of makes you ask yourself, doesn't it? What hidden sustaining strength lies in you, just waiting for the right storm to reveal it.
And doesn't that make you wonder, thinking about Noriega's challenge to his students? Whose field in your own life, a stalled project, a bad habit, a career path that feels unsustainable, begs for that same kind of profound regenerative revolution?